Hello everyone, welcome back to part 2 of our Doom Builder tutorial for beginners, and this is the series on making your first level. Just some very basic things you should know. If you don't know what we did in the first episode, you can go ahead and I'll find a link to that in the description for you, and you can kind of catch up on everything we've been doing. It was very basic. So for the second part of this tutorial, since we kind of understand what the user interface is, what all the very slight tools do, and a very basic understanding of how to change textures and everything else like that, we're actually going to go ahead and focus on the production of doors this time. And if you remember last time, these two textures right here were missing. The reason that was happening is because at the bottom of this texture right here, you can see that on both sides. If we go inside the pillar, it was actually sky texture, causing it to be blending in with the sky. So all I did there was just change the texture, so now it looks uniform when we actually go into the game and test it. So what we're going to go ahead and try to do today is I'm going to show you how to make a door, the kind of functionality of how doors work, and basically we're going to be just kind of going through here and showing you how to place a couple of monsters as well, and just starting to kind of make this level seem a little bit more like a Doom level. So let's go ahead and just jump right on into it. So what we're going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to pick an area where I think a door would maybe be fitting. So first thing I'm going to go ahead and do right here is actually potentially create our exit door. So this is going to be the little area where the player can see that the area or the level is about to end. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a quick little snippet here. I'm just going to make a little outcropping so the player can kind of see this. And I am just essentially going to be making a little divot in the wall here. So you can kind of see this as it's being formulated now. So we can kind of see there's a bit of a change in a little protrusion here, a protuberance. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring this down just slightly and raise it up a little bit. So now this is going to kind of set the pace for what I would want to do for the rest of my exit door. This is kind of just a design choice. You could just make a sector. It's not going to look very great, but this is kind of just making it look more like an actual building exit. So I'm just going to add these three things, and let me explain why I add three of these after I just make a very small exit room for the player here. We'll just make this a 128, 45, over with this, come down 45, and again, come meet this 128, 45. Awesome, we have our exit room. So the reason that I actually raised this up and created three different sectors here is because I actually want to change the texture of this floor. The reason that I have to raise it up whenever I do that is kind of just a, practiced thing with Doom maps is that typically whenever you have a change in floor or a change in floor texture, you actually typically want to change the height so it doesn't look very weird when you do change that. So what we're going to do now that I've created these three sections right here is I'm actually going to bring down this first middle one right here, and this is going to be scrolling down. This is going to be the actual physical door that we're going to be creating. So for this physical door, you really can apply any texture you want. I'm going to go ahead and just do sort of a computer-ish, military installation here, showing that this is going to be kind of the outside of the base. So we have this brought down. So we're going to want to bring down these sectors as well. We could actually raise this back up to kind of match the other side. So it looks like we have a full exclamation point width here for that, so maybe a little bit above, so that should be about even. The height of that is 168, that's 176, so we can just go up one more. Perfect. And maybe that's a little too much there. All right, so we kind of have our height here of what we'd like to do, and now we can kind of get to work of what we kind of want to make our exit room look like and getting this door functional. So I'm going to focus on the door first. So because we lowered down the ceiling here, we're going to have some missing textures, everything else like that. So I actually would want to change this to be sort of a decorative entrance to the door. We can do this by clicking on both of these sector or these actual lines and changing the textures. So I'm actually instead going to be just kind of keeping with that wood aesthetic that we did earlier. So I'm going to change this to just kind of a board texture. And we can change both of these right here. That looks great. So let's go change both of these. Come into here, and I could kind of choose whatever I want. I don't think there's anything necessary that I'd have to set it as. Maybe we can kind of just choose a sort of inline texture there, so it just looks a little bit more uniform. And we have these nice decorative pillars. And we're going to want to change the sky texture so we don't have to deal with that issue anymore. So let's change this to sort of a wood outcropping maybe, seeing as it is going to be kind of flush with everything else. So we changed both of those. So now we kind of have a nice wood structure here for our door. And we're going to go ahead and just change this upper and lower to match the outside texture we were already using, which is ash wall 3. So now these will kind of line up with the original ash wall, but I am going to be changing this one a little bit later, seeing as this is a wood one. So I'm actually we'll just go ahead and do it now. So let's change it to pancase 2. So that way it's just a little bit nicer and a kind of an approachable texture here. So I'm going to just lower it down so it makes a little bit more sense as to why that's kind of matching up there. This way it kind of looks like an archway, sort of giving the player that, door entrance feel. So now for actually creating the door texture itself. So I'm going to go ahead and select the door here. So there is a category if you're using the DoomTube resource wad, which does contain doors. So since I'm kind of trying to stick with that wooden aesthetic, I think I'll maybe go ahead and choose Big Door 2. I mean, you really could choose whatever texture you'd like. It doesn't necessarily matter per se, but since I'm going to kind of go with that metal, wood, rotted kind of feeling, I'm just going to go ahead and stick with Big Door 6 here. This will be the actual exit of the level, indicating that to the player. So now we can just do a little bit of adjustment here and kind of show that this is what we're looking for to the player. So it doesn't look perfect, but it looks good enough so that we can kind of have an idea of what we would like to do. So let's come back in on the other side. And since this room is actually going to be part of the base now, I'm going to get rid of that sky texture, and we're just going to go ahead and make this thing entirely wood. We could make it whatever else we wanted to, but for right now, I'm just going to do some wood paneling there. And maybe let's change this to sort of a, an inside the base structure. We have a bunch of different ones right here we could choose from. But I think right now for what we're trying to do, maybe these will all make a good kind of creation here, but we can just go ahead and select all of these and try to make it kind of flush with the ground perhaps. And let's bring that down to about maybe right there. And so now the player can kind of see where the exit of the level is going to be, and that we're indicating to them that they are entering a new area. So this is a very just rough mock-up, and we could change these floor textures right now so it's super dependent. Maybe we can do, actually we're going to change these to be the wood paneling on the floor, and I will change the ceiling to be this sort of flat wood texture here. So we can also go ahead and just apply our door texture that we already used. Players probably not going to see this, so I'm not super worried about this door ever being super in line, but I might as well just do it for discipline reasons. And we can just now come in here and choose these two, match them outside with the ones we already did, these pan boards. And now that looks pretty good. So we can just go ahead and match it up with our panel texture here as well. And we can just kind of try to bring these down, maybe showing the flushness of what we want here. And maybe let's go down just a hair there. And that looks good. And now we can kind of decide on what we want to do here. We can end that paneling right there, perhaps. It's a little bit longer of a panel, but it looks uniform now, so we don't have that much to worry about. And these two, or this bottom section, we can kind of set to match this little gradient right here if you see that little line. So I'm just going to bump that up one. And that should be close enough. Let's just take a little peek. And it looks like the ceiling just went down a little bit. That's fine. So there we go. All right, great. So we got this figured out. We're going to change the ceiling texture as well to kind of match the inside of here. And looking pretty decent, all right, for what our intended purposes are right now. So we have the actual section of the door laid out. And what we're going to want to do now is this is the door textures, as you can see down here. So looking down at this bottom part right here, when I hover over these two lines going into line mode, you'll actually see that the door textures appear there now. So what we're going to want to go ahead and do is we are going to select both of these, and we're going to, sorry, not both of these, the actual sides of the doors, like the tracks that the doors would be on. So because it's kind of a wood metallic sort of track here, there actually is a pre-built texture for this. If you go into doors, we're going to do door track, and basically what this does is kind of just, symbolize to the player that this is where the door slides up and down. That's like the metal assembly of where the door can come down. In the game, you'll notice that if you open a door and you don't check a certain setting, the actual textures will move up with the door. That's just defaulted the way in case you kind of want a moving chain gate sort of feel. Personally, I like it to not really move, so I'm going to go ahead and check lower unpegged for the sides of the doors here. So this is going to make it so when the door opens, we see this metallic texture and it's not going to really move. So I'll just raise the door up for a second here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So now if we see these textures, the door will open up and we will no longer see that. So I'm going to lower that down. We're going to want to change the sky texture on the door so we don't have anything missing, of course. And we can just make this basically anything we want, as long as it doesn't look super, different. So I'll just go ahead and do ceiling 2 and just leave it as that for now. But now let's go ahead and select all of these, and we can come into here, hit the floor, and I will go ahead and choose what we used in the other room, which is that wood paneling. And let's go ahead and do that. Great. So now if you take a look at this, we have our door created and it is ready to go, fully textured, and our exit room is also ready for later use. So now we've created this. So let's go ahead and create maybe a long hallway for the player to follow in order to find the switch that will eventually open up this sector. So the reason, or really quick before we do make the switch, inside this sector, we're going to want to associate a tag with this. So the tag is basically something that's indicating to the engine here that this number is identified to this action and this place. That can go for multiple things, way too many things for me to kind of bring up into here for just the door. But basically what we're doing is we're just going to click on this sector and then right click on it. And we're going to give it a tag of 1, seeing as this is our first door that we're going to be associating with the exit. So now we know that this has a tag of 1, and we are good to go on making the path to opening our door. So let's go ahead and do that here. And I am going to just kind of move down here and let's do another door here to just kind of simplify things potentially. So I am going to just do this 16, and we could do a nice 208. You can kind of have this come out a little bit, and maybe we can go in actually. Oops. So let's go down at an angle of 23. Going at an angle of 23, kind of similar to what we did here. This is just my personal design preference. Doesn't have to be anything particular. And now we can do sort of a nice little aesthetic here. 128 is kind of where you'd like to be. So maybe we could make it stairs leading up to this. It's kind of maybe what we could go for. And that'd be great to show you as well. So let's go ahead and make this a 144. And we'll make this another 144. And now if we actually come into this part, we can make our door be a little bit shorter than I'd like it, but 112 is still good. So we can come right here, and we're going to repeat our 3 sector door setup there. And then I'm going to make just a room that we can go access the switch in for the players to activate the opening for the exit. So This room could really be anything you'd like. I'm just going to make a quick room. You could follow along if you'd like. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but this is kind of just for my design purposes. So let's make this, that should be fine. Maybe we can make this another 80. 112, we'll go down, do our 80 again. And we'll do our 304 and then our 80 back. And then I'm just gonna add 2 maybe side rooms here. Just adding some slight detail. So I'll go ahead and do a 45. That looks good. Maybe, actually, let's go back and redo that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on that side. And maybe on this side, we can kind of have sort of a similar 45. Coming out here, 45. And then maybe right here, we can have a little extension of the room. Again, this is totally up to you. This is nothing, you know, there's nothing that has to be done here specifically. This is just kind of for my purposes. So, all right, we'll do another 58. And maybe let's do a sort of a 96, I want to say that's matching up with. No, it's a 112. All right, there's our 96, our 58, boom. So now we've added a little bit more livelihood, and I'm going to make this the final room for the actual switch, making just a tiny bit of a wall here. And so now we have some more room to work with, and this can kind of give our player a area to go explore and maybe kill some monsters in. So let's go ahead and get these, every single one of these sectors raised up inside this actual room, because I'm going to have the player go up a staircase to reach this room. So we're going to want to go ahead and select the floor and the ceiling for this, so that the height of the room with the ceilings raises at the same time. So you can see this kind of being done with the scroll wheel. So I'm just going to go ahead and maybe just do one full exclamation point showing for our missing texture, if that kind of gives you a frame of reference. So now what we're going to have here is this will come up, and these should be our doors. So we're going to have these come up and meet it right here. And we're going to select these 3 again, just to meet the actual door length of that. We're actually going to have this come down to here though. And we'll have our other part of the door come down to there. So the doors are now going to be showing themselves, and it looks going to look pretty uniform for what we want right now. This is the actual door. We're going to bring that down all the way to there, maybe. This way, we're going to be giving ourselves the opportunity to kind of have a little bit of room of decoration if maybe we maybe wanted that, or maybe add rooms in the future into this. Potentially. So let's go ahead and just get this updated. So I'm going to go ahead and texture this, since you already know how to do that, and then I will join right back with you, and we can show you how to actually make the action of opening this door possible. Alrighty, so last time we left off, I told you I was just going to be kind of decorating the door and applying some texture, so I went ahead and did that for you. I did raise the stairs a little bit, and you can kind of do this too if you'd like. In the sense of I just kind of made it go up slightly and gradually, and I also applied some textures on these faces. I applied them on these sides as well. You can kind of take a quick look at this. I'll leave it right here for a quick second if you want to kind of get an idea. I also did it so that this protrudes just a little bit from the ceiling, so you can kind of see this along here. And then on the inside of this room, so far in this area, I've applied a wood metal texture to these walls. I've added a couple of ones that have the blood splatter on them, and maybe I will go ahead and finish that out in the rest of this room. However, so that is just kind of how it's looking like right now. And as for all of that goes, we're just going to go ahead and leave that as is. And yeah, so going into this now, we have the door textured and created the way we want it. So I'm going to go ahead and select this 2 lines right here. So now we can see that when I select both of these, you can see the door texture appear like we were talking about earlier. But now what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm not going to apply a tag because there's no switches associated with this, and there's no walkover lines associated with it. And that's kind of for slightly more advanced tutorials. But what we're just going to go ahead and do is we're going to just do dr door repeat door open close wait. So this is basically the most simple door you can have inside this little Doom Builder engine. This is basically, you can kind of go up to this door and press it and make it go up and down as many times as you'd like. And it's just kind of a nice little thing to have. And that's basically how it's associated. So let's go ahead and test it out really quick and make sure that our door is in fact working. So we're going to go ahead and let this boot up for a second. And now we are going to be in the game. So we can go take a little walk around here. This is the door that we created earlier for our exit. And this is the one right over here for the room to get into the actual exit area. So if we come up to here, press our action key, you now see that the door is open, but this is also good because this texture right here, I'm going to show you how to make that not move and kind of apply a nice metal look to that. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So go ahead and exit out. And so on this door sector right here, I'm going to click both of these lines and we can come into here, change the texture. And something you always typically want to do, like we talked about earlier, is that door track. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to that. And we're also going to do lower unpegged. And so now when I open that next time, it won't move and we can kind of go from there. So let's just finish up quickly getting this room all situated. I think I probably would like to just change this to be a little bit better rather than a sky texture because it looks kind of strange doing that. So we can just kind of go ahead and change this to be sort of a wood texture to kind of match the aesthetic in here. Oops, that's not what I wanted. So let's reselect all of those again. And we can go into the ceiling instead of floor this time. We'll change it to that flat right there. So this way, now we can kind of see that there is a bit of a decoration. And maybe right in here, we can come have our, have the switch be placed right in this corner. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, so I'm going to create a tiny little sector there, and another one right here. So now when you come look at this back area, you can see these two sectors coming down. We'll lower both of those just slightly enough to come down to about right here. This one's also going to have to be kind of an eyeball. There's no perfect way of doing it, at least that I know of. So we'll just change this middle texture. So I brought the floor and the ceiling up. So I'm going to change this to a actual switch texture, sorry. And this is located right in the switches. And we can kind of choose whatever we'd want in here. Seeing as it is kind of a wood area, I'd probably like to go with a actual wood switch. So I'm going to do, let's do the skull one. That one looks all right, the little red skull. So now I'm going to place this right here. And we can leave this ready to go. So let's just quickly apply these textures. And we can have this match the aesthetic of the room that we are currently in, which is that wood metal. Change this to wood metal as well. And let's go ahead and change all of these to our wood metal that we currently have. So let's change that, go to our wood metal. Awesome. So now we kind of have a wood looking room and now we have our switch ready to go. I'm just going to change these real quick. So instead of a ash texture, we get the pan board. Just kind of add some structural support aesthetic there. So now that is ready to go and our switch is now ready to be programmed. So like we were talking about earlier here, we actually associated a sector tag with this door that we eventually want to open. And inside this sector, you can see that it has a tag in this bottom right corner or bottom left that says tag 1. So now if we come on over into this switch that we just created, and you'll see the texture at the bottom, we can click on that, right click, and now we can change the tag to 1. So now when I come into here and we'll choose a door thing right here. So we're going to look for an S1 door. So basically the S is for a switch, and the 1 is making it so we can only do it once. So we're going to make it, we'll do a door open stay, and we can make that right here. It should be S1 door open stay. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. You can do it out of this list, but I like to just do it a little bit more categorized. But we're going to go ahead and make that, oh, whoops, I think that was a 103. Let's see. Yep, 103. All right. So now we're going to associate this with that. And one thing I'd like to kind of point out here is that when I highlight over this in line mode, the switch I just created, you'll actually see this sector light up, because now you can see that the engine is associating that this line is associated with this sector. So let's go ahead and test our sector now and make sure that this switch is actually working and that we can have a operational door. So we'll go into our new room here, open this up really quick, and we can come on over into here, press this switch, and now this door will be opened for our player. So now we know that that switch works, and now our player can exit the level successfully. So let's go quickly back into this room, because from there I saw that the switch was a little high up on the ceiling. Not a big deal, so I'm just going to lower that down just slightly. Maybe we could do about right there. I can actually probably lower both of these ceilings down, seeing as this is a little bit taller of a wall here. And now, since this is added into this area, we are pretty much good to go to start placing some monsters. And I think that, yeah, we're good to go to start placing our first couple of monsters, and players should be ready to go. So maybe in this room we can go ahead and have maybe a couple of different smaller monsters in here, seeing as this is the first level. But since this is a demonstration, you really can put whatever you'd like in here. So I'm just going to put some pretty easy enemies to take care of. Nothing really too bad for the player to have to manage. So let's just go ahead and maybe make some really easy guys to take care of, which is typically the former human and the former sergeant. They're not very bad, and they typically can be handled without problems. So maybe we can also put an imp or two in here. Maybe just adding a little bit of variety, so that this way the player will have the ability to kind of take down whichever monsters they'd like. And I'm going to make these guys both associated right there. And perhaps we can move this shotgunner right to the middle of the room, so if the player were to kill them, they could pick up the shotgun and eventually be ready to take out the other enemies here in this area. So we have our monsters placed now. So if we go into visual spectator mode, we can see that we have them there, and we should be kind of ready to go. We know our player's probably going to want a tiny amount of ammo. We don't want to give them anything ridiculous, because that kind of gets rid of the point of having to explore. So we'll just maybe give them one tiny set of ammo here. Maybe just a couple of shotgun shells over in this corner, perhaps maybe against the wall. And we could just go ahead and copy that thing, paste it down here. And I'll pop that down right there. Go ahead and clear that off our selection. And so now if you look around in this mode, you can see that these two shotgun shells are ready for the player to pick them up. So now, since we're going to be waiting for the player to go ahead and do that, I am going to add a little bit of decoration into this room. And we're going to be using some things. So maybe we can just use some very light decorations. Maybe since it's kind of a more, you know, bloody room, maybe we could potentially put a dead player. You know, if people can write whatever story they would like about that. So now there's a bit of a decoration in here. And the next episode, we'll go ahead and add a bit of more decoration. One thing I maybe perhaps would like to add is we can add a little bit of a layer here, showing maybe sort of a indented lighting scheme, which is kind of nice, because that will allow us to kind of give the player a little bit more freedom, in the sense that they can kind of see the map in that there's a protruding area in which they can see items and maybe a sky or maybe a set of lights, however we want to do. But I'm just going to go ahead and do this really quick. And we can raise this ceiling up and maybe raise this one in. We should keep this one at the same length, but we'll go ahead and raise this one up. So in this room now, I'm going to go ahead and apply a texture to all of these missing ones right here. I don't need to really walk you through this, as you should probably already know how to do that. So I'm just going to go do wood, and let's just choose something simple like this perhaps. This can kind of give us a little bit of an idea of what we'd want to do, and maybe we can go back to that skylight that we were kind of looking for. This way, we can change the lighting in this room. So I'm going to make the sky portion a little bit brighter, and we're going to come back out in here really quick and change the lighting of all of our outdoor areas just to kind of match this. So 224. So I'm actually going to make the inside sectors here, so the actual inside part of this, a little bit dimmer. That way that the player can indicate that, you know, this over here is actually indicating a natural light source, and plus the switch will now be lit up, indicating that the player should have somewhere to go and that they should want to, you know, follow that area. Looks like I forgot one sector there, so maybe 176. Cool. So now everything is slightly dimmed down, and you can see that the brightness is kind of protruding that sky coat into there. You could go in more in detail and kind of add a, you know, sort of a die-off for the light if you wanted to, but that's all I'm going to do for this tutorial. One other thing I probably will do here is I'm just going to make sort of a waterfall looking texture for just kind of a blood thing. And maybe we can have this come on out. And we're going to come right here really quick. I'm going to lower this down. Lower that down really quick. And we're going to leave this open. And we can show that this texture, seeing as I'm going to be kind of wanting this to be lit up, I'm going to add just some natural light sources here. And you can do this right in the category of light sources. I'm just going to do something really simple, maybe just like a, you know, sort of a candlestick sort of, you know, aesthetic here. So one thing I'm going to do in this sector is I am just going to slightly raise the brightness by 1 level so that players can see the blood waterfall we're about to make. And it's just going to be right here, and we'll come into here. And the blood fall. So doesn't really matter which one you choose. I'm not sure of the differences between all of them. But for these, we'll just go ahead and change these to the wood metal that actually has a little bit of a blood stain on it for, you know, that actual kind of aesthetic there, which would be really nice because now we can change the floor here to be blood. So it looks like there's an actual waterfall there. And I'll just quickly come in here, change all of these, and we will change these to metal. And we should be looking good. Actually, let's change them to wood so we can kind of keep uniform with that. Go back into our blood wall here. Alrighty, so now we have a little bit of a decoration. It's nothing super crazy, but this should give you an idea of how we want to exit this level. And while we're still here, let's go ahead and just make a switch to leave our level for the player to use. So I'm going to make this one that comes out from the ground, and we could just make that by simply going like this in our little exit room. And I will raise this ceiling up to maybe about right here for the player to walk into, and they can see this little exit protrusion. Just gonna come in here, add the paneling back, and maybe we can actually just choose this pan board. And right here, I'll go ahead and choose this missing switch texture. And the switch texture can be really anything we'd like. I'm gonna go ahead and add the skull. And we just have to kind of adjust this, seeing as it's not super center. And that looks about good to me, I think. Alrighty, and now we can just come back into our line mode here, select the line of that switch we just created. And if you look all the way at the bottom here, or towards this part actually, there's the exit. So I'm gonna go right here to exit level, switch once. All right, and now we will be able to fully complete our level, and we will be able to start decorating more in future episodes and do a little bit more advanced techniques. So let's make sure that this is working. So we'll load up Doom real quick. And when we come into here, so now when we go try to open this door, it won't let us, indicating that we have to go find somewhere else to open this door from. So once we open this up, the monsters will now be in this room. We can pick up our gun that we just got from the monster. Take these guys out, and as you kind of see around here, this light source is now protruding onto our blood waterfall here, which is looking nice, looking clean. And we can see this switch, so we'll go ahead, open that switch by using the action key, come back outside, and now we will see the exit room, and we can come right up to our switch, hit the action key, and that's the end of our level. So that should complete this part of the tutorial. I've kind of shown you how to do switches and doors and place our first monsters and maybe some ammo items. And now you kind of have a general idea of how most stuff works for very basic level editing. I hope this tutorial helped you. If you have any other questions, leave them down in the comments and let me know, and I will happily respond to you. Thank you so much for your time.